back, baby.
Yes, sir. Welcome back to Del Rey.
Thank you. Always good to be here, and we'll be doing another show here soon. So,
Awesome.
why don't we unwind the headlines
Yeah.
like we usually do? It's been busy. Neuralink, the brain-computer interface company that's famous for being affiliated with Elon Musk, just raised $650 million. They're going to expand patient access. They currently have implanted into 5 people with severe paralysis. Next up is a company called Bivacor. They received FDA breakthrough for titanium total artificial heart.
Mm-hmm.
It's a company we know well. I know Joe interviewed their founder a couple years ago on LinkedIn. They're usually a bridge to transplant, but now they're looking at it for even longer term use. So that's pretty exciting for heart failure patients. And then we've got the private equity takeover from TPG and Blackstone. They proposed a leveraged buyout of Hologic for nearly $17 billion. So that's like $72 a share for a stock that's around $50 right now. The non-binding offer was declined by Hologic, but you know how those things work. It could resurface again later.
Yeah.
So something to keep an eye on. What's caught your attention lately?
Yeah. May's been an incredibly busy month on the fundraising and, mergers and acquisition standpoint. So a few that caught my eye: Boston Scientific's acquisition of Sonovi. Globus picked up Nevro for $250 million to expand their neuromodulation footprint, which is still, a growing category. And then we have a few on the fundraising side that were really interesting. Fire One raised $120 million to expand its remote heart failure monitoring platform, which continues to drive that signal that both clinicians as well as patients and payers and providers are looking for more data as it pertains to medical devices, and then even more specifically within interventional cardiology and heart failure.
Yeah.
And then you have another company, really interesting, Francis Medical, raised $80 million for its vapor ablation system, which is a novel approach to treat prostate, kidney, and bladder cancer with fewer side effects and a faster recovery. So a lot of movement, and if you're following the money, it's kind of dictating where we are in the market. There's a lot of activity, a lot of people changing positions. I think this last month we placed, was it 33 people?
Yeah.
With probably 20 new clients. So a lot of activity going on in the market for the month of May.
Yeah, and these companies, they're looking at changing the standard of care, right? So when people come to us and say, hey, should I bet my career on this company? We usually look at our 4 pillars approach, right? What is the technology? What is the market? Is it a growing market or is it saturated? What is the leadership team? And what's the mission of that company? Well, if it's a technology that's changing the standard of care, then that's usually a pretty good bet, because then that's sort of evergreen in front of you, what you can build as far as your career in the market. We're also looking at complex reimbursement.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't want to make a career change for a company and a technology that doesn't have reimbursement yet. But if you can be the person to help them get that, then the sky's the limit with a lot of these companies. And sometimes it goes like that, and sometimes it takes a while.
Yeah.
And finally, we'll probably touch on here smart devices and implants. You mentioned something earlier that I just find fascinating. So my wife has the Aura Ring. She's always looking at the data on it.
Same.
Yeah, I'm thinking about getting one. I got rid of my smartwatch because I just had too many people trying to get a hold of me on too many things. But I think the Aura Ring's cool. For my birthday, I got the Hume scale. Have you heard of that?
No.
It takes your body fat, it takes your total skeletal mass, it tells you your metabolic age, your heart rate. So metabolically, I'm 35.
Yeah.
So I'll take that.
Versus
46. I won't tell you what it said when my wife stepped on it. So
I don't want to know. I don't want to know.
Metabolic age is way off.
Yeah.
But her Aura Ring has her at a good thing, so she's going to stick with the Aura Ring. But no, those are things I think we should dive into a little bit. Is one, does the product change the standard of care? 2, what does complex reimbursement look like, and how is that being addressed by the companies we're working with and the individuals that we're working with? And then these smart devices and implants, how they're really starting to take over from like a EKG at home. I don't know if you see the commercials on TV for, I think it's Cardium.
Yeah.
You just put your fingers on it and it goes right to your smartphone, and it's right at home.
Yeah.
Everything you need. And that's for $79 or something like that.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about something that, is really innovative coming from Zimmer. So just recently, it seems like we're going through this complete transformation of Zimmer as an organization. They're bringing in Arnold Schwarzenegger as
You'll
their
be back.
as their
Chief Movement
chief
Officer.
movement officer.
Yeah.
Ivan Tornos is everywhere and anywhere. He's one of the hardest drivers in medtech, and their Rosa platform. So, certainly orthopedic implants, not a novel concept. It's been around for a very long time. They're doing something really unique, combining robotics, but as well as having some type of sensing mechanism that is going to be able to alert both clinician and patient on infection, right?
Infection, gait analysis. When you think about it, if you put a chip of any kind into a medical device, the possibilities are almost endless.
Hmm.
And something I found interesting from an interview that I was watching, they said infections for implants can harm more people than cancer, and that's mind-boggling. But it makes sense. You're getting a lot more people having these procedures, and if something goes wrong, you could have an infection. So yeah, if temperature rises, usually means an infection, and that's something a smart implant could detect. And then you have gait analysis. Eventually in the shoulders, they'll probably see, is this thing rotating properly? And all this is real-time data for both the patient and the physician. It almost feels like we're in a futuristic, total recall type of world.
Yeah.
But that's where things are going, and it's exciting to be part of that as we build out these companies.
Yeah. I mean, Zimmer's a really interesting case study, and then a company that we're doing some work for now, obviously much smaller in scale, but Avive Solutions. So they make an AED device. So you golf, I golf. If we're out in the golf course, there's usually stations for go to the bathroom or a halfway house for snacks, and there'll be a Zoll or a Philips AED on the side of that building.
Yep.
And I'm not sure when the last time you took a look at it was, and this whole process of getting involved with Samir, who's the CEO over at Avive, made me take a second look at those devices. And I tried to put myself in the position of, if I was on a golf course, if I was at a community center, if I was somewhere where somebody was having a sudden cardiac arrest event, in real time, under pressure, could I use this thing effectively?
Sure.
And you start to question yourself. And what they're doing is basically taking that technology that hasn't been modernized in a very long time, putting a really slick user interface. It has audio cues. It has visual cues.
Wow.
They have a partnership with 911 dispatch. So as soon as you put the leads on the individual and that machine starts working, it's sending the vitals to the 911 dispatch that automatically is being sent to you.
That's cool.
So when you talk about how we can get to patients as quickly as possible, and in that particular instance, 9 out of 10 people that have a sudden cardiac arrest that aren't in a hospital or aren't in the presence of somebody who knows CPR or an AED, unfortunately, they don't make it. So getting access and the right technology to those people as quickly as humanly possible is imperative. And when you have technology like that, that's easy to use, like I said, it's very intuitive in the way that it looks. Yeah. We're seeing more and more technology like that is really going to be driving and changing standards of care.
I'm glad you brought that up, because convenience is king,
Yeah.
right? And I worked at Cintas before I got into med device, and we had a first aid and safety division, and we sold those AEDs. And we had to go through training, and we had to train people on how to use them. So how do you make something better, right? How do you change the standard of care? You make it easier. You make it convenient. I don't know if you've watched the show The Pit on HBO. It's a new medical show. It's great. It's like ER on steroids.
Okay.
And what is really cool about it is it's the proving ground for new medical devices. So we've seen like the Lucas machine on there, where it's basically a CPR robot that's doing chest compressions. The ECMO machine for the lungs, and they've got, what was the other one? The Butterfly Network,
cool.
portable ultrasound that goes right to the mobile phone. So it's really neat to see all these things coming out. And then the challenge, though, a lot of great medical devices come out. Do they have reimbursement? And if they don't, how can they get it? Are they operating off certain pass-through code?
Yeah.
Or are they operating off a code that already exists? So speaking of reimbursement, you're working with a couple clients right now where complex reimbursement is part of, whoever we bring on board, they're going to have to handle that.
Yeah.
Maybe you can talk through that a bit.
Yeah, and what's interesting are some of these companies that are starting to scale. They certainly have reimbursement and market access leaders, but you can't be a commercial leader and not have that in your bag somewhere? Now, are you the one who's going to be advocating in Congress? You're going to be in DC, you're going to be with the FDA. No, that's not going to be your responsibility. But you are going to be the one who needs to convince the doc, whether it's in a hospital, whether it's an ASC or in an office-based setting, what the payment's going to look like for them.
Yeah.
So not only why should they use the device as it pertains to the benefit of their patients, but also how are they going to make money off of using this device in a different setting. So that's a huge portion of changing a standard of care, is being able to articulately describe and make them understand how all of that back of the house activity works for them. So when you talk about, you know, the roles that we play, the 33, right? So 33 people in May took on new opportunities that we helped them with. As I looked back at that list, a large majority of them were commercial people.
Yeah.
And they were probably directors to VPs and a few CCOs. And one of the ways that if you're a territory manager, if you're a commercial sales manager, even if you're a director and you want to expand the breadth of experience you have within a big company or within a smaller company, is try to get involved in some of those reimbursement market access conversations to some degree.
Yeah.
Because when you start to make your way up the ladder, and if you go down the startup pathway, that's going to be something that they're going to want to know. Do you have any exposure to that category or to that vertical? Or have you been selling catheters to an end user and you can do that really, really well, but everything that takes to bring that product to the market is something that's completely out of your purview?
Well, and you do want that feather in your cap for a couple reasons, and this will lead into nicely, you know, how do you select your next company?
Yeah.
Right? Do you go with the safe bet and the big title, or do you maybe take a lateral move because the technology's probably a little bit more revolutionary and it's going to help you a lot more later in your career? And we'll get into that in a second. But I've got a lot of clients that, you know, with early stage companies, you don't have reimbursement. And so they say, Ryan, find me somebody who's been successful in a challenging reimbursement environment. And there's so many companies out there like that. And you mentioned, and you're right, we don't need people who are going to be lobbyists on Capitol Hill. But what we do need is people that have a proven track record of taking a product from zero reimbursement to partial to full, right? Integrating with payers, working with the OR, the ASC, the hospital. These are all different settings.
Yeah.
Right. So let's pivot to, you know, what I was leading into earlier. I know you have a client currently and an individual you were talking to, and I think it's a powerful story to share, because people ask me all the time, Ryan, should I bet my career on this company?
Yeah.
And I'll give them the pros and the cons from my stance. But this individual you talked to really just kind of laid it all on the line and said, I'm at a great company now. If I'm going to leave, I'm going to leave for this. Why don't you take the audience through that?
Yeah. I mean, I think people are becoming more and more aware of everything that we talked about as pertains to connectivity of devices, electronics, especially if we're in the heart failure space. We're talking about pressure, hemodynamics. So this individual is working at a very well-known interventional cardiology company. Let's say that. They make a really complex electromechanical device. And he's a director. And as I was asking him what types of things he's looking for, he said, well, I do have a COO opportunity. And in my head, I'm like, director, skipping VP, going to COO, seems pretty attractive, right? Startup. Compensation's great, where north of where he is today.
Okay.
But he was hung up on the technology. And I said, well, what is it about the technology? And in not so many words, he would be leaving a very complex electromechanical device that he helped build from the ground up to go to more of a legacy product that might have an iteration or two. They might come out with a next generation, but it's not going to have the same electronics. It's not going to have software. It's not going to have systems unless something really drastic changes with their philosophy, because it's in thrombectomy. So it's not going to be anything completely out of what's already out there. It's almost a Me Too product. So to hear his thought process of, I'm willing to pass up a C-level position, which if he stays where he is today, he's probably 5 years removed from something like that happening. So he's willing to pass that up in the near term. He's willing to pass up a higher compensation package because he knows down the road, that technology isn't going to advance his career.
Hmm.
Whereas if he either stays where he is and continues to grow that platform or takes a lateral at another company that has complex technology, that's going to set him up for the future. So more and more people, at least from where I sit, are looking at delayed gratification
Sure.
for the long term of their career, not just necessarily I want to be a C-level person and I don't care where it comes from. I'll take the next C-level position put in front of me if it's a C and compensation makes sense.
Right.
People are becoming a little bit more thoughtful in terms of where the market is going with complex technologies, robotics, AI, remote patient monitoring, sensing technologies versus just wanting the big role with the corner office in a view.
That's a great point. And the question I ask is, are you chasing a title or are you chasing a career?
Yeah.
Right. And you think about that, a lot of people are chasing a title because that's what corporate America ingrains into your head. You need to move from here to here to here to here. And if you don't and your career stagnates, you feel like a failure. And then that's why people just get comfortable and maintain the status quo, or they leave and it's, kind of the same league, different jersey. Whereas if you can really diversify your career, right? So let's use my own career for example. I was a commercial sales guy the whole time.
Mhm.
Now, when I was at Boston Scientific, I could have went and did product management like some of my colleagues, where you get the marketing experience upstream or downstream. But I really like sales, so I did sales training. That's still sales,
Yeah.
right? So if you have a chance to diversify your career, you should do it. Because later on, when you want to become a CCO or a CEO, they're going to say, well, Devin's got sales, he's got marketing, he has traditional med device. Oh, he also left and did digital health, and he's worked at large companies and small companies. Like, Devin's the whole package. I mean, we know that already.
Oh yeah.
So that's really the guidance we give people is don't just rely on what you've always done. And I did a post the other day. It says, if you hire what you've always hired, you'll get what you've always had.
Mm-hmm.
And individuals are starting to think that way too. And they're starting to get bold with the companies that they're choosing. And they're saying, hey, if I don't have the domain expertise, I understand why I'm not going to jump off the page to you. However, I didn't have the domain expertise when I went from, cardiology to neurology,
Mm-hmm.
or neurology to endoscopy. And so you have people that have moved through all these specialties, and that's a pretty impressive career. And if you can afford, time-wise, compensation-wise, to take one step back, to take two steps forward, I don't consider that taking a step back.
Yeah.
That's a quantum leap forward if you have the vision to see what's in front of you. So that's the guidance we try to give people, and I think your guy's story was a great example of that.
Yeah. Yeah. From your side, what are you seeing in the market? I mean, you do a lot of commercial roles, but certainly dabble in other things. But what types of activities, asks are you hearing from clients? Are you hearing from candidates in terms of things that they're looking for and how they evaluate opportunities? I think over this last year, as funding has seemed to come back online a little bit, there's an uptick in sophistication from both sides on how they're evaluating one another, and there's more directness up front, which is great for everybody. It saves everybody time. There's no surprises at the end.
Yep.
What are you seeing as it pertains to that, given that you do a lot of high-level commercial roles?
I'm seeing a lot of candid conversations. Unfortunately, in the past, it was, hey, we're going to judge this piece of paper and not the person. Now we're having more in-depth initial conversations. And what it's leading to is a little bit of a longer process. And Joe and I talked about this during our sit the other day. It's okay. You have to be patient. Don't go for the first thing every time. Really look at, okay, company A is offering this, company B is offering this. I'm going to choose this just because it's faster.
Yeah.
That being said, companies and individuals both have to be aware of that time when things aren't happening. So the transparency comes in on our end, where we share some of the tools to show where people are at in the process. But for me, it's sharing clear expectations of, okay, this is what the job's going to be. For example, right now I am hiring a vice president of commercial excellence. Okay, this is a role where the individual is going to work with business unit leaders across the company. Okay, it's a U.S.-based role, can live remote, but they're going to have to do demand planning, forecasting, strat planning, a little bit of sales training, create comp plans. And you're going to have to get everybody to weigh in so that they'll buy in. Imagine being a new VP at a company. People have been there. They're used to doing things a certain way. You're going to have to be humble and say, hey, Devin, give me your top 3 challenges so I can understand how to help you as I build out this commercial excellence for this organization. What if it's a company that's built on distributors and now they're going direct? Well, those distributors all are doing things differently. When you go direct, everybody has to be rowing the boat in the same direction, right? The company way. And you're this new person coming in and trying to bring everyone together. So that's a big job. So we're seeing more roles like that, where organizations are saying, hey, we're going to put our money where it needs to go to bring everybody together because culture is that important. And it's a word that gets thrown around a lot. And I'll tell you, when I joined the Mullings group, I knew what the culture was here because I had seen it blossom online. But you don't know till you get somewhere. And culture is real simple. It's doing what you say you're going to do, and then you have integrity in all your processes. But you can't say our culture is going to be this. Your people will tell you what your culture is.
Yeah.
And so the best organizations I'm working with today are the ones that are talking about that a lot up front with individuals, and then the process is a lot smoother, even if it is a little bit longer.
Yeah. Yeah.
How about you?
I mean, similar. A lot of the things that I'm working on are, the word disruptive gets thrown around so much, but it's introducing something new technology to the market, since we work so much with startups.
Yeah.
So going back to that changing standard of care is becoming more and more important and valuable for people. And it's transferable, right? So, I mean, if there's a client that we're working with that, is making a really unique device for the placement of ear tubes, short-term ear tubes in children under 4 is about 80% of their business.
Yeah, my kids have those.
Okay, so you understand as a parent the difficulty of bringing your kid to the hospital, handing them off to an anesthesiologist and hoping for the best, right?
It's scary. I mean, even if they have a blocked tear duct, they put a thing that looks like a piece of dental floss in their eye, and you're freaking out.
Yep. So it could be traumatizing for the child, but for the parents too, because you just don't know what can happen with somebody that age and size under general anesthesia.
Yeah.
And then you have potential cases if the tube gets stuck, they have to go back in, and that could be a second time. So there's all these complications that come with children under anesthesia.
Yep.
Everyone knows that. So we have a client that is taking that procedure and driving it to the office. It's an office-based procedure now. They have a really unique technology that can do that.
Okay.
We talked about reimbursement. They just got their G code for an office-based procedure.
Okay.
So they're looking for somebody who can help them navigate. How do we take this G code that gives us access to the conversation? But just because we have access to the conversation doesn't mean it's a shoo-in to drive. We have to convince them to do it.
Yeah.
Because as it stands now, it's probably one of the easiest parts of that ENT's day in terms of doing these surgical procedures. They can stockpile them up and do quite a few in a short period of time. So now you're taking it to the office, and how are they going to get paid? What's the reimbursement? How are you going to help them build a practice within their practice so that Ryan's ENT clinic can advertise to Devin, the father, that if your child has an ear infection or chronic ear infections, that I should go to Ryan's clinic. How am I going to know as a parent where to go? And that's going to be the responsibility of the medical device company and that sales leader to figure out, okay, we can get the product to you in your office.
Yep.
But you didn't get into practice to be a marketing person. You got into practice to help patients.
Yeah.
So we're going to help you bring this message to the market, to the end user. That's a huge skill that's very important to have. And that's really changing a standard of care.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. There's a lot of companies, my wheels are spinning, and I'm sure yours were when I was talking about the VP of Commercial Excellence. You're like, I know 3 companies and 10 people that Ryan should talk to. As soon as you started talking about ENT and startups, I thought about Intersect back in the day. That had the stents for the nose, and then I think of Aaron Medical that has the next gen balloons.
Yeah.
And there's all these startups in each specialty, in each space, and people have done this before, right? They've built a product from scratch. They built a marketing from scratch. they don't like to call it program building in med tech for compliance reasons, but that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
You are building a program. And we say it all the time. I feel like I say it on every show, but people can't choose an option they don't know exists.
Yep.
And you talk to any parent, heck, you could do like a Facebook campaign because all the parents are on Facebook or Instagram, and every parent's going to see that and they're going to say, I'm going to the office to get those tubes for my kids. I'm not putting them under anesthesia. So very exciting time.
Yeah.
We're going to continue to see more companies going that route. We started this conversation with talking about Arnold Schwarzenegger being the chief movement officer with the "You'll be back" tagline. But think about it. People trust endorsements, and especially if the person endorsing it, whether it's Arnold or somebody else, has actually used that product. I remember when Zimmer had acquired Biomet years ago, and in the hospitals I used to call on when I was in med device, I would go in and I would see Mary Lou Retton, who was the Olympic champion gymnast, and she had a Biomet implant, and that was a spokesperson back at the time. So we're just going to continue to see those things. I'm excited for the future. I like wellness. I like doing everything I can at home. Who knows what device you and I are going to try next before our next show.
Yeah. It was great catching up with you.
Yeah, man. Cheers.
Cheers.
Clink.